Hello everyone, I'm Babli Jonathan. You welcome to this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinox Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. In our top stories tonight, Cameroon's head of state, Paul Biya, decrees a state burial for late business tycoon, mayor of Bana in the west region of the country and member of the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPD, and political party, Kaji de Fosso Joseph. The President of the Republic will be represented at his burial over the weekend by Senate President Marcel Nyat-Jifendi. His mortal remains arrived the nation today from South Africa. We'll be giving you details in this newscast. And equally coming up in this news, we talk about workers of the Limbe branch of Cameroon Telecommunications, notably security guards of that company in the southwest region of the country, who went on a rampage over 21 months of unpaid salaries. Management has promised to solve their problems latest tomorrow. Those were our top stories. The President of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, has decided that a state burial be done in honor of a late business tycoon, mayor of Bana in the west region of the Republic of Cameroon and member of the Central Committee of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPD, and political party. That is going to be over the weekend, and he will be represented at that ceremony by Senate President Marcel Nyat-Jifendi. Earlier today, the mortal remains of Kaji de Fosso Joseph arrived the country, notably in the country's economic capital, Douala, at the 201 Air Force Base from South Africa. Details in this report.
A highly emotional moment at the Douala 201 Air Force Base Wednesday. The private jet having on board the mortal remains of late business tycoon Kaji de Fosso Joseph arrives from South Africa, where he died. The corpse is received in strict military tradition in honor of the statesman and patriarch. His casket is decorated with the national flag of Cameroon in recognition for the great services he rendered the nation. Few minutes later, the convoy leaves the 201 Air Force Base en route to one of the greatest industrial outlets of the late business magnate, the Union des Brasseries du Cameroun, UCB. From the UCB factory, it is conveyed to his Bonanjo residence ahead of burial in his native Bana village in the west region of Cameroon at the weekend.
As I indicated earlier, the President of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, will be represented at the funeral of the late business tycoon Kanji Defoso Joseph at the weekend in Bana in the west region of the country by Senate President Marcel Nyat Jifenjian. Coming up at 9 p.m. today on Equinox Television, a special documentary on the life and career of the late business tycoon, mayor of Bana and member of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPDM, political party. Now we talk something else. The family of the 20-year-old young man shot dead by a gendarme officer in Mabanda in the Douala 4 subdivision has launched a legal action to get justice in that case. And innocent as he went investigating, he compiled this report.
Family members, friends and sympathizers continue mourning 20-year-old Xavier Darren Lowe, killed by gendarme bullets Friday, September 7th, 2018, around John White in Mabanda Bonaberi in the Douala 4 municipality. It has brought sleepless nights to relatives, especially to Jules Lowe, father of the deceased first child.
Perdre un enfant n'est pas facile.
It is not easy to lose a child. It is a big blow to a man. My son left the house. About 11 minutes later, I was informed he was shot dead. I have put everything in God's hands.
Je ne crois qu'à la justice et je remets tout entre les mains de Dieu.
Xavier Darren Lowe was shot dead by a gendarme woman of that neighborhood, as reported by eyewitnesses and friends of the 20-year-old.
Ce jour, aux environs de 10 heures, c'est nous étions à la salle de game.
We were in a game hall and later joined by Darren, who was from paying his school fees. The serviceman immediately left and alerted the gendarme element of the arrival of Darren he had termed a criminal. Upon arriving, the two gendarmes intimidated my friend, my brother, with a gun.
Elle dit, demande à sa collègue, j'espère que tu as bien chargé l'arme comme il était demandé.
One of the gendarmes asked the colleague with a gun to execute.
Sa collègue a dit que ce n'est pas ce qu'on est venu faire ici là. Elle s'est mise à refuser les 2 balles.
Darren tried to escape. Unfortunately, he was gunned down in the laps and chest region.
C'est là où elle s'est mise à la prière, à tirer la première balle au niveau de la côte. Et directement, elle charge encore la deuxième balle.
We equally learned that the corpse of Darren was not allowed to be touched by the population that gathered and was threatened.
C'est là où ils ont vite porté le corps pour mettre sur le taxi pour fuir avec.
According to Jules Lowe, his son carried no weapon and it was fake allegation by gendarmes.
Tous les témoins, vous êtes allés sur les lieux du crime.
He says his first son was not a hoodlum. He was a student, though heady at home like any other child in the quarter.
Et c'est un élève en plus.
On tue Darren pourquoi? Darren n'a jamais entré dans la maison de quelqu'un dans ce quartier.
Only nightmares make up his dreams.
Tu ne peux pas dormir normalement quand tu penses que le corps de ton fils est dans un frigo. C'est impossible.
Reason why he has decided to file a complaint to the court for his son's killers to be brought to book and punished accordingly.
Et le Cameroun est un pays de droit. Je pense que on arrivera au fond et on va punir tous les coupables.
Darren's grandmother demands nothing else but her grandson, who has been taking care of her.
Comme dans mon enfant. Mais voici, je suis malade. C'est Darren qui me conduit à l'hôpital.
Deceased Darren Xavier Lowe, 20 years old, is now lying in the morgue of the Bonasama District Hospital in Bonaberi, Douala 4, pending burial. Consternation still looms in the quarter, and his family and sympathizers continue mourning his shocking death.
We now take you to the opaque city of Limbe in the southwest region of the Republic of Cameroon, where security guards downed their tools over 21 months of unpaid salaries. Management has promised to solve their problem latest Friday. Davidson Maimo has more from Limbe.
Wednesday, the 12th of September 2018, these young persons, all of Cameroonian nationality, working as security guards of the Cameroon Telecommunication Agency Camtel in the southwest region, sealed the gate of the regional office of Camtel in Limbe prohibiting other staffs of the agency from entering. The security workers are demanding unpaid salaries for 21 months owed them by Camtel.
Work here for 21 months, so they have not paid our salaries. So that is why we come here to ask.
We have been serving for 21 months without salary. Every day we are coming, they are already giving our agendas, come today, come tomorrow. We are just praying that they pay our month's salary, we should leave the area. Okay.
The workers say their children are all at home not going to school because of financial difficulties, yet their fathers goes to work every day.
Our children need to go to school. We have not paid our house rent, so that is all. We need our money. We don't have any problem with everybody.
For close to 5 hours, Camtel administrative, technical and other staffs stayed outside with every effort to strike a deal with the striking security guard was abortive. It took the intervention of the divisional officer for Limbe 1, a Palestine, whose office is directly opposite Camtel, and have been observing the unfolding from a distance to intervene with state security forces. The striking security guard told the divisional officer that they have tabled their matter to the delegate of labor and social security, the senior divisional officer for FACO, and the governor on several occasions with promises made that are never fulfilled. Again, another promised in a closed-door meeting with the divisional officer for Limbe 1 subdivision, a Palestine, was made as we are told. We all hope and pray that this time the promise is fulfilled.
Still in Limbe, scores of persons have been rendered homeless by wild flames. The flames ravaged the house in the Bakoko neighborhood in that part of the southwest region. Once more, Davidson Maimo has details from Limbe.
These children, unaware of the circumstances that lies ahead of them, as they are now homeless, in their innocent and pure heart, stand and glanced at a distance how their home has been completely consumed by fire. The fire, according to eyewitness account, started at about 12 p.m. in one of the rooms which was apparently locked since no one was at home.
They say fire don't start on top bed. They don't get the gas, they don't get the stove. No one knows how fire come out. Because even the kitchen says no bomb, only the house.
Within a twinkle of an eye, the 5-room house was all down, with every effort from neighbors and persons of goodwill struggling to remove some household items not to yield any fruit due to the flammable nature of the material used in construction plank, locally known as calaboard.
And when I want to come up for house, I try to put radio on radio.
Before leaving the house, I tried putting the radio on, and there was no light. No one sustained any injury since no one was in the house, but everything has been consumed by the fire. We had on and off of light. I don't have a gas cooker, even a stove.
I don't get gas cooker, I don't get even food.
It is now left for persons of goodwill to accommodate these families, providing them with shelter and clothing.
Civil aviation safety experts from Africa and the Middle East are meeting here in the economic capital of the Republic of Cameroon, Douala, and they are discussing challenges faced by the civil aviation industry on the African continent. They are notably mapping out strategies on how to improve on civil aviation safety in African countries. Details in this report. Demand for air transport in Africa has increased steadily over the past years, with passenger numbers and freight traffic growing. But the performance of the African civil aviation industry is still lagging behind those of the rest of the world. The finding that developing countries have much poorer safety records has been a persistent conclusion in aviation safety research and continues to be the case. Thus, the need to improve on safety in the civil aviation industry of African countries, including Cameroon. It is the purpose of this 3-day international seminar organized by the International Federation of Air Traffic Controllers Association Ifatka in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala.
Two main things in this seminar. One of them is crisis communication. So communication in case of an accident, how to pass an information. That we know that today with social media, things are going very fast, especially propagation of rumors and fake news are being done, and therefore we are teaching the people how to react more rapidly and in a better way in case of crisis. And the other one is just culture, which is learning from the errors being made and trying to improve the system from those errors, instead of systematically blaming and looking for responsible people and blaming them.
These civil aviation experts and stakeholders from Africa and the Middle East are brainstorming on how to enhance a strong safety culture among attendees, primary operational air traffic controllers, supervisors, air traffic control managers, and associated functions. Dignitaries from across the African continent have today paid respect and of course a tribute to the fallen former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan. His corpse has been laid at the foyer of the Accra International Conference Center. Funeral services will take place at the auditorium of the Accra International Conference Center tomorrow. Now we talked to one of the former colleagues of the former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan. We talked to Dr. Simon Munzo, and he tells us who was Kofi Annan in this report.
Kofi Annan.
I, Kofi Annan.
Solemnly swear.
Solemnly swear.
Described as a humble man, Kofi Annan rose from a humble beginning within the United Nations system to the top of the World Organization.
Kofi Annan, the man, you know, the person that we came to appreciate, was someone who started very humbly within the United Nations system. He was the first, and I would say he still is, Secretary General of the United Nations to have come from the ranks of staff of the United Nations. Before then and since then, Secretaries General of the UN have tended to come from member states, former ministers, former prime ministers, and all of that. But for a staff member of the United Nations, Kofi Annan was the first and so far the only to accede to that position.
His former collaborator, Simon Munzo, says he made a remarkable impact on the international scene during his term of office.
Unlike his predecessors, who tended to center policy and strategy around member state interests, Kofi Annan made every effort to make the United Nations a people-centered organization. Hence his emphasis on peace, hence his emphasis on development, hence his emphasis on human rights, the three main pillars of United Nations work during the 10 years where Kofi Annan was Secretary General.
Cameroon also benefited from the fallout of his commitment to world peace.
With regard to our own country, Cameroon, I think the greatest service that Kofi Annan rendered us and the legacy that he left us was brokering the peace between Cameroon and Nigeria over the Bakassi Peninsula. One of the graphic images that one sees is that of him standing there as President Biya and President Obasanjo exchanged this handshake. It's a graphic image of Kofi Annan as peacemaker, Kofi Annan as a promoter of harmony and peace on the continent of Africa that he loved so well and that he served so nobly.
With today's agreement on Bakassi Peninsula, a comprehensive resolution of the dispute is within our grasp. I am confident that the two parties will continue to implement their agreements in a cooperative and constructive manner. The momentum achieved must be sustained. So I have urged the international community to give its full support to Nigeria and Cameroon's efforts to implement today's agreement on the ground as soon as possible.
However, Kofi Annan also recorded some failures in his duties.
He considered one of his greatest failures was the Rwanda genocide. You remember the Rwanda genocide took place when he was under Secretary General in charge of peacekeeping operations, and many people felt that under him, the UN should have intervened to stop the genocide, and the fact that the UN appeared to have turned aside was he himself admitted was one of the black spots in his very distinguished career.
He also failed to get an African country into the Security Council of the United Nations Organization during his term of office.
I would say that yes. I mean, generally speaking, he did not succeed with not just that, but much of his program for the reform of the United Nations to make it more democratic in terms of representation institutions and so on.
Kofi Annan died at the age of 80 following ill health.
That's it for the first segment of this newscast. Coming up next, Talking Point. Thanks for joining us in Talking Points. We're going to be talking about the industrialization drive of African nations that has so far been moving at a very slow pace. What is hindering African countries from getting into the rank of industrialized nations? What is not being done? What should be done? We're going to be looking at all of these in this edition of Talking Points with an economist. Julien Maxili is the chief economist of Kofi's Credit Insurance Company with its headquarters for Central and West Africa here in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. You're welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Now, within the past years, there have been so much talking about Africa's industrialization drive, but actions, concrete actions on the ground seem not to be yielding fruits. Why?
I mean, as you say, I mean, Kofi is a credit insurance company, and we organize this type of event, countries conference, all around the world. And this is the first time we do one, and we organize one in Central and Western Africa. And when we thought about the key topic of this event, we were thinking that industrialization is definitely by far the root of a lot of problems. The lack of industrialization is the root of a lot of problems in a number of African countries.
And where is the problem?
A few of these problems, we have seen it over the past few years. I mean, the lack of foreign revenues leading to increasing trade deficits in a lot of countries, including Cameroon. The lack of revenues for the government because of the low fiscal base, because of lower revenues coming from companies, is also partly driven by the lack of industrialization in the country, and high unemployment in a lot of countries can also be partly explained by this lack of industrialization.
What about governance?
You're right. This is also one of the problems, because of course, what we have seen in a lot of other regions, including Asia, in the past, a key solution to improve industrialization is to attract foreign investors, and to do that, of course, the business environment and governance has to be good enough to lead foreign investor to go in the country.
Now, you're one of the organizers of an event that will be coming up tomorrow here in the economic capital of the Republic of Cameroon, and this event is focusing on finding solutions to the problems that have been hindering the Africa's the development drive, or better still, the industrialization drive of many African countries. Mm-hmm. This event is going to be focusing on where are the priority areas?
Yes, definitely. I think we will discuss it tomorrow, but there are plenty of possible solutions or ways to improve this situation. I think the first one, we already talked about it, is how to attract more foreign investors in a given country, to try to attract more industries, then they can create jobs. The second one is also it relies on financing. How we can push banks to lend more to corporates that want to develop their business. And I would say another point is related to how to identify in a given country the key added values in this country. For example, a lot of African countries, including Cameroon, still rely too much on some commodities, but then you can think about it this way. Okay, we have, for example, we are good at producing and exporting some woods, for example. So how do, beyond this sector, we can look at more, we can add some values, and we can create some industries which are related to this wood industry. The same for other sectors in other countries.
No, these are all laudable ideas, but now the end product is what matters, because there's been a lot of talking, policy makers talking, experts meeting and discussing these issues and so on, but on the ground the impact is not felt. The industrialization drive of many African countries is still a thing of the future. 2035 for Cameroon, 2025, 2020 in other countries, and so on. How do you intend to bring these things to practical realities that can yield impact and upgrade the living standards of Africans?
Yeah, I think you're right. First of all, I would say this process is normal. I mean, people have to understand that this is a very long-term process to achieve and to get more industrialization, because it relies on long-term policies which takes time to come into effect. And in the meantime, in the transition period, it's very important to, I would say, communicate on, let's say, some small successes. So it's true that, of course, a lot of people don't see much improvement, but when there is an improvement, it's important to communicate on some small successes. For example, a company that is developing its activities on a new sector, or some foreign investor that is investing in the country, and so on.
Now, earlier you were talking about helping banks, or bringing banks to lend more money, because there's a big problem of financing as far as industrialization is concerned. There are many banks within the sub-region, there are many banks in these countries. But why is it that the money is difficult to move from the banks to the investors?
Again, I think this is a normal process, and we have seen it, and we're still seeing it in a lot of places all around the world. Problems come from both sides. I mean, on the one side, households and companies sometimes they don't dare to ask banks for credit. So if they don't dare doing it, banks can guess that they need some credit. On the other side, you're right. I mean, banks sometimes can be more too reluctant to lend money to small businesses, and in that case, I think the key topic and the key issue is the lack of information. So I think banks, like credit insurers, needs reliable information coming from companies to be confident enough to provide some financing and some solutions that will make it possible for businesses to develop their activity.
So how is this event organized by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and its partners going to kind of upgrade or enhance the level at which banks give out credit?
I mean, as I said at the beginning, at COFAS, we are used to organize this type of event in the US, in Latin America, in Europe, in Asia, and for the first time we're doing it in Central and Western Africa. And the key goal of this type of meeting is to exchange information, because we want, as a credit insurer, to, of course, to communicate and to share our experience we have seen in other places all around the world, but we want also to get inputs and information from businesses on the ground to improve our knowledge. So I think the key goal and the key topic is just to exchange information and to improve the common knowledge of both sides.
Thanks a bunch, Julien Maxili. You're the Chief Economist of COFAS Credit Insurance Company, with its headquarters. The headquarters of that company is here in Douala for Central and West Africa. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.